let me start with a confession. Though this is the Innovator series, I don't think we're here to talk about innovation. Not if we're honest. Innovation is simply a comfortable word for something that makes us deeply uncomfortable. Risk. Innovation is risk with better branding. Mon nom est Kondwani Mwase et je suis le directeur général de marque et mobilisation des auditoires à votre Centre national des arts au Canada. My name is Kondwani, pronouns he, lui, and I'm a proud member of the National Arts Centre team that, among other things, works alongside many other organizations to bring the performing arts to Canada and the world. I serve at the pleasure of remarkable teams of people who do thankless work, the real heavy lifting that moves mountains, day in and day out. Now, before I stepped into my role, I held countless others. At one of these, I joined an intramural soccer team filled with my then coworkers. We were a good bunch, but an awful team. We lost as a matter of habit. That's not fair. We didn't just lose, we were routinely throttled. And so, to add structure and focus to our play, I was asked and accepted to be the coach. It was a bit of a risky move, one that could expose me to ridicule, one that could alienate me amongst colleagues I sought to make and maintain an impression on, one that could brandish me with failure. But I said yes. Not because I had the answers, but because I realized the same thing I'd come to understand later on in my career, that risk lies not in leaping forward, rather, it lies in standing still. The decisions involved in doing the work of audience development are, spiritually speaking, no different from decisions I faced when I became coach. Calculations on risk, deciding whether or not to dive into danger, emotional peril, that is. And that's not because audience development is inherently risky, but rather failing to do so poses a far greater risk than stepping forward. Back then, doing nothing on the soccer pitch would have lost us the season. Today, doing nothing can cost us, collectively in this room, the business. Maybe not immediately, but eventually and definitively. And so, as you think about this word and all its connotations, remember that risk is not in moving, but in maintaining. Ask yourself, are you open to risk? Are you willing to have your assumptions challenged? Are you willing to flirt with failure? Or are you simply killing time in a very nice auditorium? Because what follows is not a story about certainty. It's a story about commitment to change, a commitment to community. Now, 3 beliefs shape what I'm about to unpack in the few minutes that follow. The first and somewhat complex belief is this: do well by doing good. Sometimes our sector talks about social impact and business performance as though they were opposing forces, as though we must choose between serving communities and serving survival. I reject that. Because when we build meaningful connections with underserved communities, young people, newcomers, people from a diverse set of socioeconomic circumstances, we are not simply advancing a moral imperative, we are advancing a business imperative. We are cultivating future audiences, opening pathways to find, inspire, and bond with people that will be the lifeblood of our business. Through this, we will find future artists. Through this, we will find future advocates and attendees. Through this, we will subtly or directly inspire donors from corners untapped. When you do this work, you change lives and livelihoods. And in doing so, make sure the arts are alive. The second belief is relatively simple. Lose the customer, and you lose the game. As arts administrators, culture keepers, if you will, we have a unique position of privilege to ensure that the customer, the audience, never gets forgotten. We center them. We advocate for them. We keep them at the foreground. We do this because we know that our business thrives when art and audience comes together. We live where seat and stage collide, and so we must be driven by the idea that seat and stage together must thrive. Third belief, we are in the business of relationships, not transactions, not attendance, not ticket sales, but relationships. And in truth, if you embrace these tenets, these philosophical positions that I've mentioned, then you may feel open, exposed, and certainly uncomfortable. It may feel risky, and that's a good thing. Stay in that discomfort. See it, reflect on it, understand it. Realize that if there's risk involved, it may be the good kind. It may be that you're stepping towards innovation, towards an innovative mindset. And since innovation is risk with better branding, you are most certainly in the right place. A place where outcomes are not guaranteed, where results remain in question, and where the stakes are elevated. But please don't forget what I said. See it, reflect on it, understand it. If you are ready to do this, to really do this, you will understand that the real risk you might face is not engaging with these communities. The real risk is not trying to get there in meaningful ways. Okay, so now that we've set the table and understood the frame, let's unpack what it looks like to commit. In 2023, the National Arts Centre started hosting our version of a blackout night. Now, the NAC's version is one where, while all communities are welcome and invited, we curate an experience for Black identifying audiences. From pillar to post, we try to delve into a culture-informed evening of celebration and appreciation of the performing arts. The thing I love most about these nights is they're actually not events, they're experiences. The evening does not begin when the curtain rises. It begins with an invitation that sets the stage of what's to come in a language that lands. More than words, our forays in market communicate that audiences have been intentionally considered. Meanwhile, backstage, we make sure that our frontliners are ready. We host orientation sessions at all levels to make sure folks know what to expect and appreciate the expectations before them. Audiences are to feel like they belong, and so we need to deliver with delight. Big smiles, open arms, and welcoming postures. Then comes the fun part. This past year, our Blackout Night number 7 featured an Afro-Canadian play called Copperbelt. The Succession-style story featured a young woman as the story's protagonist. Naturally, we let the perspective inform our experience. Our pre-show event was a market called Bon Marché, in English, good market. In it, we invited over 30 Afro-Caribbean women-led businesses to promote their work. We made sure that the businesses represented a variety of bases: food, fashion, wellness, media, ensuring that we didn't reinforce narrow stereotypes. Then came the show, and the show itself was, well, incredible. Not only because of the substance in the art, but because we prepared the actors for what was to come. We shared with them that this audience will be engaged to feel out loud, and that they did. Boisterous, bombastic, and brilliant, the alchemy that erupted when seat met stage was incredible. Finally, there's got to be a party, right? The party after the play, animated by 2 female performers, a DJ who played everything, including Afro beats, and a lounge-style singer from the community, both with African roots. We called it Bonne Nuit. Again, Bon is the acronym for Blackout Night. Taken further, this means good night when you translate it. It actually means good night, night, but anyways. Remarkably, this double entendre is also part of the commitment to the immersion. The event I described was the 7th Blackout Night that we've hosted. We've lived, learned, and leaned into this work 7 times. And therein lies the biggest lesson. 7. We've leaned in 7 times. We've co-created 7 times. We've innovated 7 times. And we have stumbled 7 times. This momentum has taught us another lesson. We are increasingly skeptical of one-off pilots. Try it once to take a step, then try it again. Refine it, improve it, allow people and ideas to evolve. This is an act of grace for you and your dream. But remember, the goal is not endless experimentation. The goal is thoughtful iteration. Now, as a Black man, I am wary about speaking of blackout nights. It's a great initiative, sure, but there's bias in there, and it undermines a profound truth that must cut through. This work not only feeds the organization with new devotees, but structurally, it is such that can be applied to a broader subset of situations. The resultant changes benefit everyone, not just one community. The muscles we hone in one place can be ported to another. Community work contributes to the whole. It does not compete with it. Case in point was an initiative we undertook before we launched these nights. We asked a pretty difficult question. Do our audiences reflect Canada? And the answer was no. The Canada outside our walls looked markedly different from the Canada inside them. That wasn't a marketing problem, it was a relevance problem. So our direction became simple: make audiences reflect Canada. Now, to do that, we needed a measure of transformation, or progression, if you will. And sometimes transformation begins with the smallest of things. We did research, and it showed that not everyone experienced our initial greeting, our standard greeting, in the same way. Our standard greeting was, "How may I help you?" Because of my lived experience, I understood this immediately. Sometimes it sounds like help, and sometimes it sounds like doubt. "How may I help you," translated and decoded, can sound like, "Are you in the right place? Let me help you leave." So we had to change it. "Welcome to your National Arts Center. How may I help you?" 6 words. Profound difference. Belonging before assistance. Invitation before transaction. In that case, belonging wasn't announced, it was experienced. Now this naturally forced us to ask another question. And this question led us to another question and even more questions, such as the curse when you commit to embracing an innovative spirit. Now, one of those many questions that arose was, how do we build resonance with audiences that cannot enter our halls? We had assumed naturally that they needed to come to us. So we asked a different question. What if we went to them? What if access started where people already are? Enter CHEO, which is the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, where we've launched a 2-year partnership with them to host performances in and on hospital grounds. Now, more than a logistical exercise, this is a model in co-curated programming and promotion. Combined, the National Arts Center and the hospital have served more than 300 patients, families, and caregivers through this program. And eventually, more than 400 tickets found their way back to the National Arts Center. Now, the lesson wasn't actually the ticket sales. The lesson was access. And access taught us another lesson. Work with, not for. We are not always the experts. Our partners at CHEO, the hospital, taught us many things to prove that. The deeper lesson was that effective audience development means moving beyond consultation, towards co-creation, towards shared ownership, towards shared decision-making. We are not simply making space, on site or on calendars. We are seeding space. And so, let's return to the pitch, the metaphorical playground of failure. In that case, in some cases, standing still feels safe. But standing still has consequences. Communities are changing. Audiences are changing. Canada and the world is changing. We can retreat, or we can step forward. Because programs alone do not transform organizations. Mindsets do. The greatest risk facing our sector is assuming we can thrive without these relationships. When people leave a talk about innovation, they often ask, what should I try? What should I launch? All excited. I hope you leave with different questions. I hope they're deeper. What assumptions am I still holding on to because they feel comfortable? What audiences am I still struggling to understand? And most importantly, what is the cost of that? Remember, serving underserved communities isn't the risk. Sharing power isn't the risk. Experimentation isn't the risk. Co-creation isn't the risk. The real risk is believing we can stand still while the world moves on without us. So, what would happen if you were truly committed? Committed to listening, committed to learning, committed to community and its relevance. Because risk looks like taking the first step. Commitment looks like taking the next 10. Ready, reset, go. Thank you very much.